since I first embarked on the platinum for Crash 4, I knew I wanted to talk about it, but this game isn't something I felt I could strictly review. I skipped most of the cutscenes because I was just so excited about the gameplay, so I had very little of an idea of what was going on, and honestly, I think the gameplay is so without flaw that there's not much strictly to critique. The original Crash trilogy was one of the closest things I've ever seen to a perfect series of games, and Crash 4 provided nothing but a cherry on top for said series, if the cherry was 100 hours longer, of course. Instead, I took my Crash 4 levels that can lick my taint Twitter thread to its logical extreme and channeled my thoughts of Crash 4 into a ranking of every single main story level in the game from easiest to hardest. Let's go. We start our list with Rude Awakening of Insanity Island, a level that by all rights needed to be the easiest considering it's the first. Even so, this isn't a level you'll sleepwalk. If you played the original trilogy, you'll quickly realise that Crash 4 quite literally built on their foundations. Levels are far longer and more complex. Long gone are the days of dillying through a level in 60 seconds. These are 10-minute romps minimum on your first go around, and you'll appreciate every second of it. In that way, Rude Awakening pays homage to the first level of Crash 1 with its tropical island setting, featuring beachy themes and easy jumps and basic mechanics to use to get to grips with the newest installment. It's so very easy, and if not for being the first level in the game, would be forgettable. Here we see an introduction to railing levels. Mind you, this is no meat and fuck, these are real rails, a quick romp through an indigenous village, and just when you think the level is over, we skip through a mountain and into a volcano. Not for the faint of heart, and yet somehow for the faintest of heart. Next on our list is our second level of the game, and the only other level on Insanity Island. In retrospect, it's weird how small these hub worlds can be, but honestly that's a godsend as the 100% continues. We pick up where we left off in Rude Awakening, embarking on a journey through the peak we climbed in the first level. Here we are introduced to swinging ropes and a mechanic that will absolutely beat you over the head as we work our way to the end of this game. Lani Loli, perhaps the fiddliest and most confusing of the four-dimensional masks, who has the power to pop dimensions in and out of existence. Lani Loli's mechanics fucking confused me. It just wasn't how my brain worked. Luckily, as we fall into the first chase segment of the game, we can set Lani's powers aside for now. Both the time trial and the deathless all box run for Insanity Peak are laughably easy, so you can just sit back and enjoy all the new designs. And why he kinda... We're skipping a few hub worlds ahead now with Hook, Line and Sinker, and our introduction to Torna, a larger, more humanoid Bandicoot who serves as our main character for this level. Throughout Crash 4 you'll play as different alternative characters, Dingodile, Torna, and spoilers, Cortex, and your success with them will wildly depend on your personal strengths. I found Torna's levels so easy, but the Cortex levels are really hard, so you'll see their levels at the start and end of this list respectively. Torna is great for speed relics because unlike Crash and Coco, she has no speed tech. There's no triple spin speed boost for her, which means it's more about being just super efficient with your time than it is making sure you nail specific boosts in specific moments. It's just one less thing to consider. Hook, Line and Sinker takes place on a huge pirate ship, providing ample contextual justification to spend time grappling all over the place and learning her moveset. It's a great introduction to the character, a fun level, and a very easy time trial deathless box run combo. We arrive on the doorstep of another Torna segment now, hands cupped on our knees, begging for a whiff of that grappling hook action. This level combines a fresh Torna level with a Crash chase section from a level I'd actually consider to be far harder, so we'll discuss it later. Regarding the time trial, with Torna's lack of acceleration, her segment is always going to be fairly static in terms of time. There are lots of ways to cut corners, but time spent as Torna needs to be focused on efficient traversal rather than efficient movement, if that makes sense. I don't think it does, but you can nod anyway. The better you play Torna, the less you need to worry about time saver boxes with Crash. You do, however, need to worry about the Crash boxes during the deathless 100% boxes run. Crash is in a big hamster ball running towards the camera from a huge Mad Max-esque truck, so you need to be making enough progress that you aren't run over and insta-killed. But you also need to be enough aware of what's coming up that you can actually hit the boxes you encounter. The truck will destroy boxes on the ground for you, which is a much needed bit of villain compassion, but I kept missing ones in the sky and on platforms in the air that you need to jump to, rendering this an annoyingly fiddly second half. Booty Calls is the first level in the Salty Wharf hub world, introducing us to our new pirate-themed levels and all associated enemies, which are fairly easy to avoid, if not absolute bastards. Octopus captains slash sickles in a 360 arc around themselves, and the jobby stacks will do the same, except they're invincible and patrolling. This is the first level in this list wherein time trials and deathless runs can become a bit of a bother. The deathless run can easily be thwarted by a segment about halfway through this level where you need to go down the length of one fork and back up another, and a segment right at the end with a ton of moving platforms and general confusion. Alternatively, the timing for the time trial is quite tight. You do need to be hitting every single time saver box, which combined with the presence of a railing segment through which you cannot go any faster means that you need to be absolutely nailing this level inside and out. And I died a lot in the final moments of Booty Calls as a result of some very stupid mistakes, so I had a lot of practice. Tranquility Falls is one of the middling hub worlds of Crash 4 and provides some really tricky levels alongside some of the easiest levels in the game, and Give It a Spin is no exception. Give It a Spin introduces us to our second dimensional mask, and my favourite dimensional mask, Akano, who allows Crash to do this mega spin and fly through the air, which is naturally a source of immense fun for every single level he's in. Many segments in Give It a Spin are all about learning to refine that skill by spinning up through tight corners and avoiding nitro and TNT boxes, which is great. This level becomes a journey of learning to cross space quickly, one of my many hobbies, and this becomes super fun during the time trial, which lily pads at the end notwithstanding will probably be one you nail first time. It's just about finding a rhythm. Thar He Blows is a level in Salty Wharf featuring 50% Crash, 50% Dingo, with Dingo up first. Dingo's half of this level is not nearly as long as it feels. Taking place in a single arena, you need to hop across through barrels and floating wood and piers and whatnot, and once you're through, you start with Crash at the end of the rail segment of Booty Calls. Crash's segment is the worst, but if you've recently earned your relics for Booty Calls, his segment will be significantly easier, leaving you only to master the Dingo segment. It can be tricky, as Dingo's first proper segment in the game, to my memory, it teaches you the basics of his vacuum. Jumps are easy, enemies are easy, boxes are easy. The time trial is a bit of a bastard though, earning its place on the list right here. Blast from the Past is the first prehistoric themed level of the game, taking place in the Eggipus dimension, a dimension I completely forgot about actually. I completely forgot about all of the levels here, which probably has something to do with the fact that you do this off the back of the ice-themed 11th dimension, a hub world that saw me so burned out that I put this game down for a year. Anyway, yes, Blast to the Past is deceptively straightforward after all that mess. It's tricky at points, particularly and quite uniquely the hidden gem, which is tough to grab even when you know where it is, but it's loads of fun both to play conventionally and to speedrun. The various spiked monstrosities and carnivorous plants littering your route are nothing to worry about with a bit of careful timing, and the environmental hazards are equally pedestrian. There's one single rock that would occasionally slap the tendies off my plate, but consider Blast to the Past a nice holiday before you embark on the rest of the game. Offbeat is visually the most unique level in Crash 4 by a country mile, and I have no idea why or what inspired it. Watching the cutscenes might have helped, but even so, design-wise, it's very fresh. All new characters and assets that aren't used anywhere else just for one level. That's probably why it's such a joy. Offbeat isn't easy, but it's by no means hard. The speedrun can be finished in a few attempts, and the deathless box run is fairly unmemorable, all things considered. The hardest part of Offbeat is the bonus level, which kept getting me squished by the bouncing boxes, but all in all this is a surprisingly easy level to reach the end of despite being so high in the sky. You'd expect more opportunities to fall. Offbeat has a tricky ending however. It's a lanny lowly rail section where you need to blip boxes and obstacles galore in and out of existence, which makes it a testy moment in particular for the deathless box run and a cheap bag of tricks during the time trial. At the end of a marathon like Offbeat, that's off base. Our next entry sees us all the way ahead in Bermugula's orbit. Stowed Away is a fun and unique entry to an otherwise cruel hub world. Stowed Away sees a 2D into 3D rush through Entropy's ship, past pistons and insta-killables galore. And that sounds horrible, but it's actually super fun and weirdly easy. It also helps that we get 5 minutes with dear Akano, my favourite boy. Still, there is one difficult part of this that occurs both during the time trial and the deathless runs. At the middle of this level, there's a pretty novel segment where you need to to spin exclamation mark boxes to make cargo move around, revealing your path. Only it's not really clear which cargo will move and where, which can lead to some pretty mean deaths. I can't even remember if I memorized it either. I think I just kept trying until I just did it. Stowed Away is full of opportunities to die silly deaths from a lack of concentration, but it's great fun. Our next banger from the Eggipus dimension is Dino Dash, featuring a good lump of platforming and crash buffoonery, and ending in a chase segment featuring a big red T-Rex and a lot of lava. None of this level is particularly hard except for 3 key moments. In the 100% boxes run, there's a box fairly early into this level that you need to use 2 bounce boxes to get to. More specifically, you need to bounce from a box onto another box which is directly above and then high up for the final box. This was ass, to be blunt. Absolute ass. If you hit the second bounce from beneath, it breaks, rendering the final box impossible to get, and you'd have to start the level again, which I did many times. 2. The bonus level on Dino Dash is actually fairly hard, but that's mitigated by the fact that you don't lose lives if you die on a bonus level, so it's not so much a major problem as it is a time sink. And 3. I got caught by that T-Rex on that final chase a few times when going for the deathless box run. Platforming over those difficult platforms, making sure I didn't fall in any lava, he would sit on my face unapologetically. Call it a skill issue if you must, because it probably was one. I got a lot of warnings during my playthrough about how awful Bears Repeating is, but since I love time trials, I ended up loving Bears Repeating. Bears Repeating is a crock of hot shit during the deathless all box run because of the, as the title implies, bear segment. You ride on the back of a polar bear down the slopes, and that thing has a hitbox like a cheese string, because I felt like I was hitting clusters of boxes full on and they were still walking away unscathed. And that means a restart. A full restart. It's also super hard to turn in time on the ice levels. Often you'd see a crate coming up and you'd simply not turn in time because that little bastard bear would be too busy picking his nose to make a modest recalibration. Fuckwad. Beyond that, Bears Repeating is there to give you a little more practice with Capuna Noir, the nicest of all the masks who slows time for a brief moment. It's all about learning how to handle nitro boxes, which Capuna can help you basically ignore, and it's a sweet chance to chase a skiing Cortex. I love his little laugh he does. Fossil Fueled is up next as the second trickiest level in the Eggipus dimension. This Cortex-only level sees you scaling the side of a volcano, first in 3D before traversing to a 2D layout. This is easily Cortex's easiest level and won't take you too long to mop up these relics. The biggest difficulty of this level is just in learning how to overcome the gulf between Crash and Cortex's playstyle. Cortex feels the most unique to play out of every character in the roster due to his appalling mobility and reliance on ranged attacks, with aim that feels like gently guiding a small bit of wood out of a reluctant toddler's windpipe. He can be really hard to learn and even harder to build muscle memory with. This is in part due to his dash, I found, which is bound to the same button as Crash's slide. During Crash's slide, he does damage, so if you make contact with an enemy, you'll kill them. Cortex's dash does no damage, meaning you'll often misclick and just dash into a humiliating death. He also can't double jump. His laser is difficult to aim, especially in the 3D sections. He's too small and slow, and I lose him on screen. And his fat head often finds itself colliding with nitro boxes I specifically asked him not to collide with. Still, this is Cortex's most fun and most straightforward level, so let's make the most of it. Building bridges is a modified version of the Bears Repeating level we discussed previously, this time featuring Torna. It's harder than Bears Repeating since it will probably have been a little while since you played any Torna, plus this level, for her, is all about mastering the parkour elements of her playstyle. The wall jumping requirements especially are very precise. There are a lot of intermittently electrified walls and floating enemies that I couldn't not take damage on if I tried, and I did try. No matter how careful I was, especially on the time trial and all box deathless run, there wasn't a single attempt where I didn't at least take some damage. Like, there are just some obstacles that you will hit unless you're well past the level of mastery required to get those relics in the first place. That means that you need to keep an Aku mask handy for those moments, knowing you will be using one, which also means that should you accidentally take damage ahead of time, the run will quite literally be over before it begins. And then you move on to the bear bit we already discussed, and I don't think that bears repeating. Potion Commotion is probably Torna's toughest level, taking place in Tranquility Falls, because this is the level where you learn that she is invulnerable while grapple hooking, and this is the level where that knowledge is absolutely essential for getting through the many green flying dragons that squat in your way. Their hitboxes are a little bit awkward. Sometimes you can just run past them, sometimes you can't, so it's better to just go through them, and even that needs to be properly timed. Running over lily pads and such as Torna is a lot less fun and enjoyable than it is as Crash, since her movements style is so stiff and her jumps are so short. This is typically something I like about her, but in this level specifically, it introduces such a frustrating barrier between you and your goal. The second half is the second half of Give It a Spin, so it goes from bad to good. No notes. This ice level is comparatively short when compared to the thudding behemoths of other Crash 4 levels. A rare treat, you can be sure I save it on the way to its easy platinum relic. If you can finish this level in one piece, you basically have the platinum relic for it. Which is ironic, considering the Deathless or box run is an entirely different story. In the middle of trying to keep 1000 Crash-themed plates spinning at once, carefully edging my way around this level, I would fall afoul of one of the apparent hundreds of ways to immediately die. Most specifically, the icicles. I took a cone to the brain 3 times out of 4 when going for this. There's not a lot of mercy in Stay Frosty, especially when the path splits in 2 and you have to walk up one, backtrack, and then do the other. This level introduces us to Kapuna Wa and then basically asks us to master her time-slowing abilities. At first, it is so tricky. The Crash Bandicoot series loves tossing us in at the deep end with a rapture of bullshit, particularly here. Ice level, floating ice chunks to slow down and jump on, collapsing ledges. At least you'll come out the end with a thorough understanding of one of the most useful masks in the game. Crash Compactor is one of the first levels in the game, which gives it no right whatsoever to be as challenging as it is, especially for a first-time player. This is the first level with a VHS tape, which must be retrieved without dying. This features the red gem level, not the worst of them, but red gem levels don't work like bonus levels, deaths count, so that Deathless or box run takes an extra spanner to the works. But it also features a hidden level and a Lanny Lowly segment that starts getting you to jump through walls that you have to manually blip in and out of existence, which will insta-kill you if you blip it back in while even a pixel of Crash's mass is still inside. There's fall deaths galore, tons of enemies, and a bunch of cheap tricks used to deprive you of that sweet insanity relic. The time trial is no joke either. Cruel, Toys for Bob. Very cruel. Home Cookin' is Dingodale's first level as you play the game chronologically, and his introduction level is just as massive as that big crocodile tush he's carting around. I'm looking respectfully. As my main, if you can even call it that, in Crash Team Racing, and as he's voiced by the same guy who voices Soldier 76, Dingo has a place close to my heart. Not quite in there, but close. He's finicky to control with the widest hitbox of any character in the game, which is double-edged. He can manage what feels like far bigger jumps, but every nitro box in the room will go off at the mere sight of him. His levels are all full of conveyor belts, flying enemies, and tons of explosives that you need to use to dispatch enemies, shoot distant clusters of boxes, and destroy aspects of the environment. And you will need to do plenty of that, considering he always has like 400 boxes to collect per level. The point of this level centers on learning the extents of his vacuum double jump, which can take him far, and learning how to aim said vacuum when destroying parts of the map. It makes for a very tricky time trial at first, but there are some skips you can use, and overall it's not horrendous. Dragging On is, by my estimation, the second trickiest level in Tranquility Falls because of the speed run. The no death or box run is only ever really thwarted by the awkward hitboxes of the resident dragons and the resident gongs, but it's pretty doable in a single attempt if you're astute, which I know you can be. I believe in you. The issue with the time trial is that a lot of this level is spent using the Akano mask to cover space, which can only be done so quickly. You need to make up the extra time for that platinum relic by flawlessly scraping through the moments between, which are usually complex and quite vertical, offering loads of room for error and frustrating the hell out of me. I know there's a skip you can do in this where you basically use Akano to fly out of bounds, but I tried it once and couldn't get it to work, so I just did the time trial legit instead. As the first mission in the game involving Lanny Lowly, a real grind is naturally going to be very difficult for you, maybe disproportionately so. This is the point at which I realised just how long the missions of Crash Bandicoot 4 really were. Whenever you think they're about to end, there's always 10 more minutes, and 10 more minutes worth of opportunities to get your shit rocked, and 10 more minutes of bumbling frantically through Lanny Lowly segments. Being able to zap dimensions in and out off the cuff, responding perfectly to everything in a super tight time frame, dodging the weirdly obtuse patterns of the sand sharks that ended most of my runs, and when you add a rail section, a section with static time that you cannot make up any extra time on, you narrow the available parts of the level where you can actually make a difference for your final time. It's here because it's hard for such an early level, is all I'm saying. I heard many bad things about Rock Blocked, but I think it played to my strengths, so I didn't spend much time here and I didn't especially remember it when I came back to write this list. I really enjoy the Dingodile levels, and I find that they just happen to be a matter of trying over and over again rather than learning any particularly rough speed tech. Rock Blocked sees us embark on a Dingodile level that needs to be mastered, no two ways about it. You have to skate through the Dingo level to have even a chance to get the Platinum Time Trial relic. Crash's segment features the same dinosaur chase from Dino Dash, only the timings are much tighter and you need to be nailing your time saver boxes and your jumps. Depth perception is a nightmare here, as it is on all chase levels, so the Bronto heads would usually be my cause of death since I'd misjudge the jump and just fall. And later the final lava segment with the stepping stones would be my bottleneck. But it's not awful and it can be achieved pretty quickly. Beginning this level with a 2D running segment, Hit the Road really lays bare the cruel poetry of the hitboxes on these little green fellas, which can be very finicky to work around, land on, or even look at. There is a final boss to the Hazardous Wastes dimension, but Hit the Road feels like a final boss, because soon you're out of the welcome simplicity of the side-scrolling segments of this level, and you are thrust into the real horrors of Hit the Road in all 3 dimensions. And those horrors include judging the distance on jumps, slides, and enemy attacks, which I was never able to do well. Hit the Road plays host to conveyor belts galore, all of them whimsically sitting over lava and adorned with swinging spiked maces that again are very difficult to judge. I ended up just slide jumping around them, which was as risky as it was stupid. And as if that's not enough, we enter a second side-scrolling segment with the Lani Loli, the mask that gives me a herniated brain, and gosh, this level really is like 15 minutes long, isn't it? And then we barrel into a chase segment, and if you're on the no death all box run, prepare to start right from the beginning when you miss some bullshit airborne box. Like, yes, the truck does kindly get most of them for you, but you will miss 1 or 2. All round, insane time trial and insanity relic, fittingly enough. We've got our next Capu Noir level on this list, and unless I'm incorrect, it might be her first. This level is a baptism by fire of her mechanics, featuring quick-moving enemies and obstacles that you need to perfectly time your slow time to properly navigate. This is completely fine in all box and standard runs, but balancing this in the back of your mind with a time trial is often what cost me said time trial. It looks way easier than it is, mostly due to it being an ice level. Ice levels get an instant boost of difficulty just because of the mechanics established around them. There's slippery ice into instant death, there's platforms floating in the water, there's floaty or breakable platforms in the water, they're moving, you have to jump to boxes and enemies off them, the enemies are also tricky to maneuver, some of the later stepping stones are little boats with coal fires that you can't land on, and 2 falling ledges later on need to be perfectly timed with Capuna, and I just didn't have it in me. The last few minutes of Snow Way Out are some of the most knuckle-whitening platforming segments in the game, and any risk taken is a risk taken valiantly. I can't tell you how many runs I lost here. Considering its almost fantasy-esque appearance, Crash Landed is much harder than it looks. A stunningly visually unique level, Crash Landed sees you on an alien planet, running through the landscape on foot and on the back of a friendly alien. Hellstar Remina has always left me suspicious of these kinds of things, but Crash seems to take it all in stride. The issue with Crash Landed is that it's very long. The alien segments involve a lot of split paths, some with boxes and some without, which means that your deathless all-box run becomes a labour of careful memorization of knowing exactly where you need to be at all times, and then hoping that the alien's hitbox translates into hitting the boxes you're trying to hit. There's a little row of 3 that always got me on my run, about midway through the level. Then we have the time trial. It's not insane, all things considered, and the timing is quite lax, but again, it's because the level is just so long. It's hard to master all those sequences in one go. I really enjoyed my time with Crash Landed. 5 stars. Compared to the delight of Crash Landed, Run It By You was a massive pain in the arse. Run It By You features one of the few heinous boating segments of Crash 4 where you basically can still move as normal but the fun has been reduced significantly, and that cart ride which happens about halfway through and only frustrates even more on the Dingo version of this level, which we'll cover. It features balls of TNT which you need to destroy for the boat to be able to pass through, which is a nightmare on the speed run, considering the boat approaches this cleared path with the same enthusiasm as my cat when I call her over. Boating on Crash Bandicoot involves going quick sometimes, but mostly tiptoeing around explosives and floating mines and enemies and whirlpools with insta-death hitboxes that never quite communicate to me their scope. Run It By You ends with a fairly cool sliding segment, but this just means that you're fucked on your all boxes run if you accidentally miss one on the slide down. Off Balance is incidentally the hardest level in Tranquility Falls, and my least favourite on the basis of those wall running segments. Wall running in Crash kind of annoys me, because I never quite get the hang of it, and if you fall off, it's an insta-kill fail. Run over. So I get frustrated with the fiddliness of it all, especially when it introduces Lani Loli and has you blipping things in and out of existence in a segment with zero safety nets, and so many opportunities for insta-crush death when you accidentally blip a chair back into existence as you're still jumping through it. On that note, Off Balance has tons of empty space and fire and bullshit, especially towards the end. By the time you reach the final few stepping stones, the floor is 90% air, and it's almost easy to forget about the flamethrowers and all of that noise. I only got to the end of Off Balance once during the time trial and managed the Platinum Relic in one very lucky fell swoop. Thank God that's over. We're almost at the top 10 hardest now, and you might be surprised to see no dillo-dallying as late in the list as it is. Far harder for me than Rock Blocked was no dillo-dallying, which combines a new Dingo Dial segment with the latter half of Crash's run through Run It By You, an all-out emotional circumcision that left me raw but a little bit easier to clean. There is nitro everywhere in Dingo's section, and limited accus for the inevitable times that you accidentally slurp 1 or 2 or 6 of them up while trying to grab something else. Moreover, there will be clusters of them just off screen that are literally waiting to be ran into face first on the time trial mode when you don't really have time to be checking the next few meters as you go. This one is miles harder because of that horrible cart segment, especially in the all boxes run when you need to be really quick grabbing every box while the cart moves underneath you. I'd get left behind over and over again. It was so annoying. That cart segment was probably my least favourite segment in the entire game, although that was the worst by far, hence Dillo's reasonably safe spot at number 12. Next at number 11 we have Jetboard Jetty, a level that can well and truly suck my taint. Jetboard Jetty has no right to be as long as it is. It is more than twice as long as it deserves to be, and contains some of the finickiest jetboard segments on top of a platinum relic that is, at best, very strict. We have 3D running segments, a side-scrolling segment, probably the best part, a jetboard segment, and a boss that bullied me mercilessly on the all-box run. After carefully navigating a bed of insta-kill whirlpools, mines, waterborne enemies, and one of the toughest bonus levels in the game, this boss required a superhuman amount of patience, and often your hands will be shaking a bit too hard to manage that. This is also one of the time trial relics that will become vastly harder for you if you don't learn that slide spin thing that all the developer relic speedrunners do, an extra bit of tech I never needed to learn and so never learned, but would have vastly improved the miserable time I was scraping by this level with. Nitro processing initially seemed like one that would be a massive pain. The whole green acid floor, electric bugs, metallic robot bullshit is an aesthetic I've come to associate with the hardest parts of those early childhood games. I feel like almost every game I played as a child would end up in some industrial plant where the final boss would be waiting, so naturally I had a bad taste in my mouth about this. Nitro processing is hard. It's full of weird cogs that you have to jump on, sometimes having to slow time to do so. It's got some crispy gravity runs using the Ika mask. It's got mice with spiky shields and electric bugs that cast a small AoE that you basically need to wait out, but it's a straightforward level with no other cast members involved, rendering it a blessing straight after Rush Hour. Yeah, we'll get to Rush Hour. Overall, this took a few attempts, but I barely remember the time trial, meaning it was probably fine, and the all-box run was straightforward if not challenging, which is ideal. It's all downhill from here. After the sweet late-game relief of the Eggipus dimension, we moved on to Bermugula's Orbit. The first level in Bermugula's Orbit is Out to Launch, a level that absolutely obliterated me over the course of about a day, most specifically the time trial, which is just utterly rancid. Like the all-box no-death run is surprisingly easy, as you can easily get all the boxes in the level on a first run-through. None are subtly hidden away, all you need to do is grab them without dying, which is fine, all things considered. But the time trial, oh lord. With the addition of the Ika gravity mask, Out to Launch has you flip-flopping all over the place, and doing that slowly is confusing enough. With the addition of time constraints, you will reach points where you need to alternate the pull of gravity to float between electrified floors and ceilings, a feat that takes a surprising amount of dexterity. And those insta-kill bouncing boxes really wind me up. It's so long, so complex, I don't like Out to Launch. Now we scoot all the way forward to the kinda penultimate level of the entire game. Cortex Castle is the last level we embark upon before fighting the final boss, unless you count Seeing Double, and it's a true final test. All of the masks come together multiple times across this level, and it's one you really feel like a god for mastering, particularly on the time trial. The thing about Cortex Castle is that you have the entire game behind you and nothing but a full stop ahead of you. So not only do you have all the practice you'll ever have at your disposal, but the finish line is in sight. I was way happier to just sit and retry this level for hours, knowing it was basically done. It made my losses feel a lot less futile. Easily the most serene level of Crash Bandicoot I've ever played, 10 out of 10. Seeing Double is the also sort of penultimate level of the game, being that it's unlocked upon completion of Cortex Castle, so it's like a secret final level they spring on you when you think you're finished. Seeing Double incorporates the fun half of Cortex Castle with a fairly easy Cortex level. For a final level, again, this one takes a ton of practice, but it's difficult to rage at considering you are aware that you have max a couple of hours of toil left before you finish this game. It's got a few tricky jumps and you need to be on point with the blaster, but it's weirdly short all things considered. You'll die a lot, since you need to be very precise to get the time trial especially, but the deathless box run is surprisingly okay and won't take more than a couple of tries if that. And by this point you might also be fairly competent with Cortex. A small blessing considering I only felt like I had him down when I no longer needed to play this game whatsoever. Toxic Tunnels is up next at number 5, and don't get me wrong, it is rough, but it's rough for the deathless box run more so than the time attack. The time attack isn't horrendous, my worst death being to one of the bats waiting just at the finish line, which I inexplicably forgot about, leaving me incandescent with rage, but the worst segment for that is the wheel climb, which would often catch me out, either ending up with me burning or wasting too much time to merit continuing. The worst part of Toxic Tunnels is the incredibly long gem door, which requires you to have every gem in the game to open and has a separate sprint for each gem alone, and they're all very challenging. It's a real bastard, extending the length of Toxic Tunnels by double easily, and just takes a ton of practice. It's just retry, get as far as you can, retry, get as far as you can, etc. If you die, just keep going to the end so that you can at least get the practice of finishing the level. It might take a day or two, but it's pretty doable. On our final 5 countdown, we reach the level Shipping Error of the Bermugula's Orbit dimension. This is out to launch with one of the toughest Cortex sections in the game, and the hardest segment of Crash's section. Cortex's segment is a real bastard in this level, requiring some perfectly timed jumps and dodges. The entire level is loaded with nitro boxes, and Crash's half specifically was a heinous gravity run through multitudes of ranged enemies, harkening back to that crawl up the side of Anno Londo we all took during our first run of Dark Souls. There's way too much to watch out for, with way too vague hitboxes. Super fiddly, super cruel, and super miserable. That's Shipping Error. In my experience, Rush Hour isn't too bad, it's just too long. If you can get to the end during the time trial, you'll probably finish Rush Hour with a developer relic, not just a platinum relic. It's just that your chances of getting to the end of this level are infinitely mini. Not only is it long, but you're using characters you won't be spectacularly familiar with over long distances, and the final stretch sees you running through the aforementioned Rush Hour, dodging vehicles that feel random in their pattern. Rush Hour sees us piloting Dingo and Torna, there's no crash segment here, and I can't decide which is worse. A lot of Torna's level is all rail segments, so it's difficult to make up time, but her boxes are easier to grab and you don't need to go out of your way for much. Dingo's half has a horrible segment where you need to run forward over the tops of cars while dodging mountains of nitro, but you can make up more time on his. This will take a lot of patience, a lot, but if you can finish the level, you'll probably have the relic. We've reached the top 3 now, and considering Rush Hour, Toxic Tunnels and Rock Blocked are far behind us, I bet you're wondering what's up next. As I mentioned before, I feel like different people have different skills, and that means that our lists are going to be very different. On that note, you're either going to be nodding along with every statement I'm about to make, or absolutely aghast at my ability to write off the misery of your hardest Crash 4 levels. Apply a pinch of salt. The Crate Escape hounded me for a long time, mainly because I forgot how to play Cortex after his last level, and forgot that you could make enemies bounce with his blaster, so I kept turning them to stone and then being confused as to why I couldn't make any of the jumps. His level is full of nitro, dead drops, and some insta-kill luggage carts that thwarted so many of my attempts. I played this level probably upwards of 50 times and made it to the Crash half in less than 5 of them. Crash's half is deceptively difficult. It looks like a straight line to the finish, and in a sense it is, but it sees you jumping across a sequence of big metal cargo boxes to the visible end in sight, and I would fall between the cracks so easily I'd be screaming. This level hurts me to remember. Number 2 on our countdown is Food Run. Do you even remember this level? Because I sure do. Food Run is the first level to my memory that makes use of every single mask, rendering it the first in a series of ultimate tests of skill. By the time you've reached Cortex Castle, you should be well acquainted with all the masks in the game, but as early as Food Run, there are definitely still some creases to iron out. Food Run sees you hopping across futuristic architecture high in the sky, with ample opportunity to fall to your death. It evolves into your wall running between moving train cars, into having to use Lani Loli to blip obstacles on said carts in and out of existence, to using the gravity mask to just skirt past them all. The time trial for this level took me so long, and the all boxes no death run was equally as taxing. What is depth perception? And here we are, friends. Shit happens. I couldn't decide whether this level was hard or if it was just because I'd burned out on Crash Bandicoot 4 so critically by the time I attempted Ship Happens, but I smashed my head against this for 3 days before giving up on the game and putting it down for an entire year. Yes, I put Crash 4 down for a year during my attempts at the time trial for this level. Ship Happens combines a Cortex level with a Crash level, and as we've discussed, Cortex controls like hot shit with super limited movement and an utmost refusal to cover space on any productive level. Cortex's level sees us focusing on skimming our way across nitro boxes, like jumping and dashing over them and somehow getting the precision calibrated enough to land on the bouncing box, and then performing more controlled jumps along and around said nitro boxes. One wrong step means death, and whichever Aku masks you find, you will be using. I'd get through this segment like 1 out of 10 times, and I'd land in Crash's half, the hardest half of Snow Way Out. I remember all that water and insta-death obstacles and ice and silly enemies, and getting to the end and you're 15 seconds slow. I barely remember this through the blood-red blurred memory of Ship Happens, a level that technically took me 14 months to beat. And that's all for our ranking of every single Crash Bandicoot 4 level from easiest to hardest. Let me know yours in the comments, and if you've not played the game, tell me something else, I guess. Favourite flower? Favourite reason not to play Crash Bandicoot 4? Favourite child? Thank you and good night.